The news. San Francisco is next, and Boston could lose World Cup games. President Trump in the Oval touting his crime crackdown, saying more cities are on his map. The numbers that the administration revealed that they say shows that his plan is working. Plus, you know he's blowing up the boats, right? But did the commander-in-chief also authorize covert operations inside Venezuela? He was asked about it, and he didn't downplay it.
Why did you authorize the CIA to go into Venezuela? And is there more information you can share about these strikes on the alleged...
Well, I can't do that, but I authorized for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America.
You hear that? He said authorized. How about that? Also tonight, a gruesome process. That is how the president described the push to return hostage remains. We are live in the Middle East as the peace plan holds, but also as Hamas falls short. And $15 billion a day. That's how much the government shutdown could cost, according to the Treasury Secretary. This, as a district judge, puts a temporary block on the federal firings. But first tonight, here from the Hill, San Francisco is next. That from President Trump today as he stood in the Oval Office next to his FBI director, touting his administration's crime crackdown. Kash Patel saying they have the numbers to prove that their plan is working. And with that, the president also called offsides on one city about to host the World Cup. Congressman Glenn Ivy, a Democrat from Maryland, with us in a moment here on the Hill. Mick Mulvaney with us as well. But first, out over to 1600, our Kelly Meyer live at the White House with all of it. Kelly?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. A lot of headlines made inside the Oval Office today, as it tends to be these days, from the president's strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. Trump saying they are now looking at possible land strikes. He also said India will stop buying Russian oil, which he hopes will push Russian President Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table. Ukrainian President Zelensky is set to be here on Friday. And here at home, the president and his team touted the results from a summer violent crime crackdown, arresting nearly 8,700 violent criminals in 3 months. But he said, the president said he isn't done yet and even floated a new city for these operations.
This is an amazing thing, and we're just at the start. We're going to go into other cities that we're not talking about purposely. We're getting ready to go in. I'm going to be strongly recommending, at the request of government officials, which is always nice, that you start looking at San Francisco.
President Trump also mentioning Memphis, and Attorney General Pam Bondi says she'll have an update on the crime-fighting efforts in that city next week. Blake?
All right, our Kelly Meyer live tonight on the North Lawn. Kelly, thank you. With us now, the Maryland Democratic Congressman Glenn Ivy, member of the House Appropriations Committee, back with us once again here on the Hill. Congressman, thanks for being here. Nice to see you, sir. Also, there were a lot of statistics that the White House put out there today. National homicide stats, let's show it real quick. They say compared to the year before, when you go month by month, it is down. And then when you go look at criminal program arrests, they say no comparison this year compared to the last 4. Do you give them credit?
I mean, maybe. I think you have to see how the numbers actually bear out over time. I mean, one of the concerns I had with respect to this big surge effort is usually crime reduction is a long-term effort that requires a long-term strategy. Putting the National Guard in for a few months and then taking them out doesn't necessarily fix the long-term problem. So I think that's issue number one. Issue number two, though, is the long-term solution is more cops, more teachers, and the like. But the Trump administration has actually been poaching local law enforcement in order to hire them for ICE and other federal roles. So, over time, they could actually be undermining law enforcement in the particular cities they've been targeting.
Here's what the president said today about the World Cup, one of the major cities, of course, being Boston, and the situation there and whether or not he can move the World Cup. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Somebody said, would we think about taking the World Cup away from Boston if they don't straighten it out? And the answer is yes, we have the right to do that with FIFA. So if we think that L.A. is going to be bad, or we think that applies a little bit to the Olympics, too.
If the president doesn't believe, Congressman, that a city is safe, and if he wants to call up FIFA and say move the games around, do you object to that?
Yeah, because he's wrong, I think, about about his assessment. Certainly Boston. I mean, I think they had, what, like 30 homicides last year, something like that, 25. I don't remember exactly, but it's not exactly the crime capital of the world, certainly not from a homicide standpoint. And I think we've seen over the past months how overblown his claims about Los Angeles, some of these other cities have been. So it's a little hard to take
you say overblown, though, but I suspect you would say that you probably feel safer and things have gotten better here in Washington, no?
I didn't feel unsafe in Washington before they got here, frankly. And I, as you know, my town is the eastern border of Washington, D.C. But again, you know, if you really want to fix it, don't just roll in here with National Guard guys that stand around, you know, on the tourist attractions for 3 or 4 months and spend $1 million a day to put them up in hotels. Put the money in local law enforcement, the cops that are going to be here for the next few years, to fight this on the street day in and day out. And by the way, with respect to D.C., the Republicans are still withholding $1.1 billion of D.C.'s own money, which the mayor said she would put towards more cops, more teachers, and the like. So he can't have it both ways on that.
I like to remind our audience, Congressman, here on NewsNation, or those listening to us on Sirius XM, you're a Harvard law grad, so you know a thing or two in the legal field. Here's what the president said today about the possibility of him physically going to the United States Supreme Court for that big tariff hearing.
If we are not allowed to use what other people use against us, there's no defense. It'll be a disaster for America. That's why I think I'm going to go to the Supreme Court to watch it. I've not done that, and I had some pretty big cases. I think it's one of the most important cases ever brought.
All right, put the Harvard law hat on. I don't think there's ever been an American president that's done that. Would you object to him doing it?
I don't know that I would object. You know, I've never seen a president do it. I think that's fair. You have probably had members of Congress who've not only gone, but been, in some cases, maybe even participated in the legal work. But, you know, I think the president has some very important things to do from the standpoint of running the country. I'd encourage him to focus on that. Yeah, I don't know the needs to see how the oral argument plays out in a minute-by-minute basis. Let's focus on the job at hand. And I'd love to see him do more with respect to, for example, reopening the government, negotiating with Democrats, and fixing the health care mess that the House Republicans and Senate Republicans have created with the $1 trillion in cuts to health care, Medicaid, and the failure to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
All right, we'll leave it there. Glenn Ivy, Democrat, just down the road, as he mentioned, in Maryland. Thanks for being with us tonight. See you again soon. As the congressman was talking about other congressmen who had been at the Supreme Court at one point in time, Mick Mulvaney raised his hand. I saw out of the side of my eye. NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff, of course, former congressman as well. Could you imagine that scene?
Yeah.
If the president of the United States walked up the steps to the United States Supreme Court, and I think it goes to show, Mick, that case in particular is essentially the backbone of his economic agenda, to where he said in the Oval today, I might go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and I think it's the backbone for a reason that people aren't getting. If he loses the case, he's got other ways to do the similar tariffs. There's other tariff tools available to him, okay? But if he loses the case because the Supreme Court sort of limits his ability to declare emergencies, that could have application well beyond just tariffs. A lot of the other stuff he wants to do is based on declaring an emergency. For example, emergency on immigration, emergency on whatever, crime, those types of things. So I think he's right, but not for the reason that a lot of people are talking about.
I found this back to what really started in the Oval Office today on crime and what the president's going to do next. I found this pretty revealing. Let's play it real quick.
I campaigned on crime, but I never thought we'd go into every city and take a really safe city that we've all been living with for years and make them safe. And now it's like a passion for me, and it's a passion for the people behind me.
I mean, the issue of crime is something that he did campaign on, but what I think the president is saying there is he thinks he hit on something.
And I think he thinks it's working. And I think there's evidence that it is working. Look, I like Glenn Ivy. I didn't serve with him, but I admire the guy. I think he's very well articulated in what he's saying. But I do feel safer in Washington, D.C. than I did before. And a lot of people do. You could walk over to Union Station right now and people say, yeah, it's safer here than it was before Trump did what he did. And I think Trump likes results. He also likes quick results, and he's getting that with these National Guard deployments.
So how long do you think he does this for? Right? I mean, he's in office another, let's do some back of the envelope math, like 38 months here. So, like, is this going to be what we see, you think, from him over the next few years?
I look at this
as he says, city by city today in the Oval.
I'll answer that question again after you tell me who wins the midterms. I think it's where we are at least until November of 26. If the Republicans hold the House and the Senate in the midterms, yeah, I think it might continue the whole 4 years. If the Democrats take one or both of those chambers, then I think you might see a dramatic change in what the White House is focusing on.
I'm going to get to this with Ron Johnson on the other side in a second, but that New York Times story today that the president was authorizing covert operations inside Venezuela, and then thank goodness he was asked about it inside the Oval.
Yeah.
He acknowledged it. That takes things to a new level, Mick.
It does, and the senator will have better insights on that, I think, than I will. But I still, it's hard for me to take off my old chief of staff hat. And what my takeaway from that article is the New York Times printed classified information, and that we need to have a long conversation about whether or not that's even responsible or not.
All right. Well, you heard the president basically confirm it a moment ago, but I hear you on that. Mick, thank you. Appreciate it. Coming up, still here on the Hill. Did you hear what that guy had to say today? Zohran Mamdani, the candidate for New York City mayor. He was asked about the president and the Middle East. I'm going to play you that soundbite. And as I was just discussing with Mick, you know, the U.S. blowing up drug boats near Venezuela. That now the 5th time that's happened. But what about land strikes? What the president talked about in the Oval Office today after a big report, and a live look inside the Kennedy Center just down the road from us. Lights, camera, action almost. Cuomo hosting a town hall less than 2 hours from now. We will have a live preview coming up. I thank you for being with us tonight in Washington. I'm Blake Burman. Back on the other side. 4 minutes. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Tonight, just a day after another deadly strike against another alleged drug boat off the coast of Venezuela, President Trump ramping up his threats against the country, saying that potential land incursions are not off the table.
What's the next step in this war on cartels, and are you considering options, are you considering strikes on land?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control.
The president also confirming reporting from earlier today from the New York Times that he authorized the CIA to conduct lethal covert operations in Venezuela in an effort to oust, potentially, who knows, the dictator Nicolas Maduro.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer? But I think Venezuela is feeling heat.
It's now here on the Hill. Republican Senator, great state of Wisconsin, back with us once again. Ron Johnson, member of the Budget, Finance, and Homeland Security Committees. Senator, I'm going to get to the government shutdown, which I know is a big deal up on the Hill in a moment. But first, this story broke this afternoon, and I want to get your perspective. As I mentioned, you used to be the chair of the Homeland Security Committee. There was this report in the New York Times that the president had authorized these covert operations in Venezuela. He was asked about it. The commander-in-chief was in the Oval Office. Do you think that's the direction we should be headed?
Well, when you consider that we lose approximately 100,000 Americans to drug overdoses, again, drugs that come from these narco-terrorist states like Venezuela. It's not a legitimate government. We do not recognize Maduro. He's a narco-terrorist. We had Secretary of State Rubio in our Senate lunch last week. We have exquisite detail. We know exactly who these people are. We know the operations. And again, these people are engaged in waging war against America, killing 100,000 Americans. I don't know what else to do. Just interdiction of these drugs, that's in manufacturing, the 10% rate of interdiction, that's scrap. This is cost of doing business. We need to stop this narco trafficking.
So that's obviously out on the water, as you know, and we've all seen the video, but it seemed to be taken to the next level potentially today with the idea of land, right? Which I don't think that's boots on the ground.
Well, again,
but I don't know what that would be, and I guess I guess that brings the question of what could it be, and would you be, how do you think that would be received?
When we were only interdicting the boats, that didn't stop the boat traffic. Blowing them out of the water, that's pretty well slowed the boat traffic. Now they're going to shift to land routes. We've got to stop the land routes as well. Again, this is a dirty, nasty business. These people are killing Americans. These are evil people. They need, they're not going to stop. We have to stop them.
Regime change, or are you not ready to go there?
Again, I'll leave that up to the president. I'm not in charge of foreign policy. He is. But again, Maduro, rigged an election, completely illegitimate government.
Got it. We'll leave it there. All right, let's turn to the shutdown here. There was a lot of news today on a whole lot of fronts, Senator, as you know. But for our audience who's just joining us, the troops got paid, and the White House put out the memo today explaining that the troops got paid today in the middle of the month on October 15th. One of the things that they said in that memo was that they are able to take funds that had been appropriated already to pay the troops. Obviously, Senator, everyone wants to see the troops paid, right? You're not going to find anyone who'll say otherwise. But do you think the way that the White House did it, do you believe that's legal?
Well, again, yes. Okay, the president's got a great deal of authority. Congress has given him that kind of authority. But again, there's a way out of this. Just pass the House continuing resolution. That'll pay everybody. That's what the Democrats just voted down again for the 9th time. I obviously propose the Eliminate Shutdown Act to do away with shutdowns forever. We ought to pass that. What I have introduced is the Shutdown Fairness Act, which would pay anybody who we force to work. That'd just be a fair thing to do. I don't know if that's going to come up for a vote or not, but the best way of handling this is just pass the House bill. Again, Democrats voted that down for the 9th time just today.
I hear you on that. If the White House is just able to move money around however it sees fit, and I ask this respectfully, sir, what's the need for appropriators?
Well, again, he'll probably have limitations. My guess, Russ Vought is very careful about this. They're looking at legal authorities. They're doing what they can do. I'm not sure how many funds they've got, which is one of the reasons that, I'm hoping leadership will support the Government Shutdown Act, the Shutdown Fairness Act, so that we can pay everybody that we're forcing to work, people that we say are essential.
The White House also said today, Russ Vought, basically, that there could be another 10,000 or so layoffs coming. Should the White House take that step?
Listen, I'm for anything that's going to reduce the size, scope, and cost of government and its influence over our lives. As government grows, our freedoms have receded. The core problem here in government is just too big. So I'm for anything that's going to reduce the size and scope of it. Democrats seem to want to give Russ Vought that power, so he'll use it.
Here is a Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. I want to get your reaction on the other side. Senator Ron Johnson with us.
Mike Johnson passed a clean CR. 3 Democratic senators have come over. The Leader Thune has a vote every day, and they want to negotiate. We're saying reopen the government, negotiate.
Is it hurting the economy?
I've seen numbers that are starting to hurt the economy, maybe up to $15 billion a day.
Are you there, Senator, on that figure?
I don't know. I'm sure it's harming our economy. I'm sure it's going to cost us more running government this way. So again, that's why I've proposed for years now some sort of automatic continuing resolution. And my latest version of that is just the simplest of all. Eliminate Shutdown Act just sets up 14-day rolling continuing appropriations where we haven't funded different agencies. It doesn't impact the appropriation process. They can still pass appropriation bills and start funding those levels of government. But until we do that, you don't shut government down. You don't not pay people you're forced to work. You just fund government at the previous levels. What could be more common sense? Democrats obviously don't like it. Unfortunately, a few of our appropriators didn't like it either. But hopefully they can change their mind next time they get to vote on it.
Well, the sunset looks beautiful as we show a live picture there. Senator Ron Johnson with us in the halls of Congress. You can see the lights are on, but day 15, no off-ramp at this point. We'll stay on it. Senator, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill.
Have a good night.
You as well. All right, still much more ahead. Other side of the break. Zohran Mamdani breaks his silence on the peace deal in the Middle East. What he said today when he was asked, should the terrorist group Hamas put down their arms? And we're about 90 minutes away from NewsNation's town hall inside the Kennedy Center. We will take you inside live when The Hill returns.
.com.
Welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. 6:30 here in Washington tonight, 1:30 in the Middle East, 6 days in. And the fragile ceasefire in that region continues to hold. President Trump's 20-point peace plan now entering what he calls phase 2, though questions remain, including the return of the remains of some of the missing hostages. Live from us once again from Tel Aviv, our man on the ground there in the Middle East, Robert Sherman, with us tonight with the very latest. Robert?
Well, hey there, Blake. Well, just moments ago, actually, two coffins that were containing remains were just delivered to the IDF and dropped off at a forensic center here in Israel. Tension is rising on the ground here because while Hamas claims that these were hostages, well, overnight, 4 hostage remains were returned, and then one of them was found to not match the DNA of any hostages inside. It has sparked outrage on the ground here in Israel. And to be clear, Hamas was supposed to return all hostage remains on Monday. There's been a significant delay in all of this. 2 of the remains that are not back yet, Americans, Itai Hen, as well as Omer Nutra. Both of them Americans, both of them, their bodies still not back home. The family emphasizing that while everyone's talking about the celebration and the jubilee surrounding all the 20 living hostages that have come back, they emphasize this is not over yet. And Israel says they will not stop until all hostages are back. Take a listen.
Hamas, the terror organization, is required to uphold its commitments to the mediators and return all of our hostages as part of the implementation of this agreement. We will not compromise on this, and we will spare no effort until our fallen hostages return, every last one of them.
President Trump says that he wants conversations about phase 2 to carry on. Phase 2 is inherently more difficult when it comes to negotiations. That includes who will govern Gaza and how Hamas will ultimately disarm, with the president emphasizing they will disarm, whether that's diplomatically or by force. The president also said in an interview today that if Hamas does not follow all of the agreements that are set forth by this deal that is in place, Israel does have the green light to go back into Gaza. Blake?
Robert, how's that message being received there from President Trump?
Well, there's a lot of outrage here, Blake, because this deal was supposed to include 28 hostage remains being returned on Monday. This is a big deal. It's becoming more and more significant on the ground here, and there is this widespread insistence all hostages must come home. Blake?
Robert Sherman live for us once again in Tel Aviv tonight. Robert, thank you. So inside the Oval Office today, the president once again warning Hamas to back off the violence inside Gaza now that the ceasefire is in effect.
We want the weapons to be given up, sacrificed, and they've agreed to do it. Now they have to do it, and if they don't do it, we'll do it.
And as you heard from Robert there, Hamas is yet to return all of the hostage remains. With us now, back once again here on the Hill, Greg Landsman, a Democrat from Ohio. Always enjoy having the congressman on. Love to hear the perspective. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. You heard Robert there in the Middle East. You heard the president there inside the Oval Office. What do you make of it?
Well, I hope that Hamas does what they said they were going to do, which is to return all of the hostages, including the remaining deceased hostages, including 2 Americans and several women. My worry is that we're never going to see those bodies, in particular the women, because of what they did, and that we're going to have this ongoing tension. But the larger issue is the issue of disarming Hamas and having a legitimate governing authority that can, rebuild and establish some lasting peace. And that's going to require ongoing serious engagement from the president and a large team and these Arab nations.
Yeah, so if your concerns play out, what would you like to see the president do?
Yeah. I'd like lock in completely. I mean, he was able to get, presumably, because we don't totally know how this all went down, but he was able to get those who have leverage over Hamas inside Gaza, Turkey, Qatar, maybe Egypt, to put the kind of pressure on Hamas to get that initial piece of the deal done. And thank God, like these hostages who'd been there for 700-800 days are now home. The rest of it will require similar pressure. And so, you know, he's got to get in Qatar's face, and the Egyptians, Turkey, and get the same thing done, which is to say, look, we are done. We're done with Hamas. They said they were done. These Arab countries, 22 of them said, we are done with Hamas. The region has to be done.
Right. This, over the last couple of years, was personal for you in a different sense. You had an encampment outside of your home, Congressman, as you know, but just for our audience here, your office, one of the district office was also vandalized. And those stories were obviously in the news as it was unfolding. Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist candidate, was on Fox News today. And he was asked about what he would like to see in the Middle East and out of Hamas. First off, I should note, the first thing that he did was take a shot at Israel. And then on the back half of the conversation was this. I want to play it and get your reaction.
Do you believe that Hamas should lay down their weapons and leave the leadership in Gaza?
I believe that any future here in New York City is one that we have to make sure that's affordable for all. And as it pertains to Israel and Palestine, that we have to ensure that there is peace. And that is the future that we have to fight for.
But you won't say that Hamas should lay down their arms and give up leadership in Gaza.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety.
And Congressman, you had those encampments outside your home. You know there's 1 million Jews who live in New York City. Should they trust that man right there, if he's elected, which the polls and the betting market show will happen? Should they trust him to lead New York City?
I think there are larger issues. Like, yes, the Jewish community, but the broader community, you know, has to, you know, see something like that and have some concerns. This is a terrorist organization that not only brutally killed, tortured Israelis, Jews, on October 7th, but they're, you know, doing that to innocent Palestinians right now in Gaza. The idea of just saying I don't have an opinion on whether or not they should lay down their arms is just a lapse in judgment, or is a problem, or it's something that, you know, suggests some level of dishonesty. Either way,
what do you think it is?
Voters should have some concerns. I don't know. Like he comes off as a politician to me, which is like, you know, maybe he's just trying to get through the interview, or he's just trying to say what he thinks, you know, will fly, as opposed to just saying what's in your heart or like what you believe. And like, if you're not watching this and you say, look, I want this war to end. It's been terrible. Too many people have died. I want peace between the two, groups. I want peace in the Middle East. Hamas is a huge problem. These 22 Arab countries said it. They have to be done. They are done with Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and you can't get to peace with them still in charge.
Greg Landsman, when you're in studio, or when you're, I see you in town, but last time we did this at studio, hope we get to do it again in person. Greg Landsman, Democrat there from Ohio, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, live look, you got it. Of course, live look right now at the Kennedy Center, just, I don't know, a couple miles down the road from us here. A little over an hour from now, NewsNation's Chris Cuomo hosting a bipartisan town hall. Couldn't come at a better time. Whole lot of issues: government shutdown, ICE, immigration, the National Guard, ceasefire, all the things that we talk about here on the Hill. He'll be discussing with D.C. power players. NewsNation's Joe Khalil has the very latest from inside. What up, Joe?
Hey, Blake, literally seconds ago, they just blasted the speakers, so I'm going to talk over them, but just want you to know, they were going through the run-through here. Of course, right, the timing. You can see the stage is all set now. It looks very cool. I've been in the Kennedy Center a lot, never seen it like this, all NewsNation down with our swag and our logo up there. All of these seats that you see here, Blake, these are all going to be full. The audience, many of them will get to actually ask questions and be participants in this town hall. Obviously, Chris Cuomo hosting it here. You got Stephen A. Smith and Bill O'Reilly. No shortage of strong opinions on that stage. But what's going to be really unique about this event, as we've done before, is it's what NewsNation is all about. You're going to hear perspectives from all across the political spectrum on stories and topics that are just absolutely the most important and relevant ones going on right now. You see ICE raids around the country in different cities. You see the federal agents and those scenes. Tom Homan, the border czar, is going to be here. The shutdown's going on. You're going to have several lawmakers on both sides of the aisle here, a lot of big names. So it's going to be very dynamic and robust discussion. Should be a very interesting event here. And of course, as I'm wrapping up, it gets quiet now. So that's how it goes, Blake. But
hope they gave you a free ticket.
Eastern, everyone should stick around.
All right,
yeah,
Joe
exactly,
Khalil.
Exactly.
All right, thanks, bud. Appreciate it. All right, Joe, as Joe mentioned, you can watch the NewsNation Town Hall. Chris, O'Reilly, Stephen A. tonight, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, right here, only on NewsNation. But before then, it's still to come. First, it was the boat strikes. You know the video, right? But our land strikes next. An explosive report today from the New York Times came out of nowhere, and the president asked about it in the Oval. Other side.
Vraylar.
So did President Trump actually say the quiet part out loud when it came to recent reporting just this afternoon from the New York Times? The Times reporting that he authorized the CIA to conduct covert operations in Venezuela. He was then in the Oval Office, so you knew this question was coming, and he appeared to confirm the reporting during the late afternoon press conference. Watch.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer? But I think Venezuela's feeling heat.
All right, so he didn't answer that right. Of course, you don't expect him to. However, he would respond to this.
What's the next step in this war on cartels, and are you considering options, are you considering strikes on land?
Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control.
Of course, it all follows the latest strike by the Trump administration against what it calls narco-terrorists headed to the U.S. from Venezuela and the Caribbean Sea. And this afternoon, President Trump suggested that the U.S. may go even further. Full panel here with me now. Mick Mulvaney, back again, former chief of staff in the first Trump administration. Joné Wartell, back-to-back days. How about that? Democratic strategist. Mark Short, former chief of staff to the vice president, Mike Pence. And Scott Bolden, a back-to-back as well, NewsNation political contributor. You've been here too, back-to-back. I know, but Joné's rare. So thank you, Mick. I appreciate it.
Don't be jealous.
This report dropped in the New York Times this afternoon, Mark, of greenlighting covert CIA operations in Venezuela. And the president, he was asked about it, and he basically confirmed that something is on the table. And I guess the question is, what's the next step here, given what we've seen from the air in the water?
I can't tell you what the next step is, Blake. I think the reality is that we need to understand that the Maduro regime is an illegitimate regime. If they are a narco-terrorist nation, they've been supported by America's biggest enemies, and they've seized American property. I think the reality is that they are exporting drugs to the United States, and it's serious. But at the same time, I think for the administration to take action of this nature, it probably should go to Congress to get permission.
What about the concept of on land? In some
That's my same position. I feel like they should go to Congress and ask for permission to do that.
Well, they have to under the law, don't they? And I don't know what a narco-terrorist is. If they're drug dealers, I'm concerned about the legality of bombing and killing drug dealers who may be in international waters, and you anticipate, your intelligence says drugs are coming here. Well, then why not just arrest them and give them a trial or have them send them back to Venezuela? Killing them sends a message, but I'm not sure it's a legal message.
Republicans and Democrats have both mentioned that this is something that is actually an issue in terms of the legality of this. So there's concern on both sides here about what the proper protocol should be and whether this is dangerous. And the reality is that it is.
But we've heard that, right, for like the last couple of weeks. What I thought was a couple different things. One, the report. But then second, the president seemed to confirm, yeah, they could go further.
Yeah. which is what folks are really concerned about, because it's a really dangerous precedent that he's setting that, like you mentioned, killing, folks who could be trafficking drugs in international waters. And so he's creating and transcending a lot of foreign policy here and really setting a dangerous precedent that our allies and enemies could take note of.
You've got a concern of a different kind.
I think people are missing something, which is ordinarily when Trump is asked the question, are you doing something, he'll say, we're not taking anything off the table.
Right.
That's not what he said today. What he said today was, yes, which means that it's probably a lot further down than people realize.
One of the questions that I immediately thought of was obviously the CIA covert operations and how that got out there, Mick.
Yeah, I got a problem with it. I do, and I know we're not going to get a chance to talk tonight about the new policies in place at the Defense Department on the media and so forth, but somebody committed a crime. Somebody did. Somebody leaked classified information to the New York Times, and that's wrong. And the New York Times printed it. Now, you can make the case that maybe that's defensible. I don't think that it is, but somebody committed a crime here, and that needs to be fixed.
All right. Other big story today from Venezuela to China. I thought there was a pretty remarkable scene today. It was the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, the Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer, holding a press conference about China. You know, the back and forth, the whipsaw from Friday to Monday, the market's moving all over the place. Here was Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary.
We don't want to damage their economy. We don't believe that they want to damage ours, but they are a command and control economy, and they are going to neither command nor control us.
Oh, the two conservatives are laughing here.
Look, I thought that you're not going to beat China by trying to be more like China.
That's why the conservatives. And you're there too?
God bless you. That's a great line. I'm stealing that line.
Anytime. And I think the reality is that I thought when we won the elections in November, Republicans get the House, send the White House. I didn't think we'd be state-owned enterprises or price controls on drugs coming in from overseas, or now price floors that we're announcing in relation to China trade. So this seems to be an agenda I thought the Democrats and Scott would be advocating more than I'd see from a Republican administration.
And as a Republican, that concerns me because it's not going to change. It's just going to become more. The Democrats are probably more excited about this than anybody because they wanted to do this for generations, but they were afraid we'd call them communists for doing it. So there's a moral hazard here. Listen, I understand. I saw the press conference. I understand the logic. I understand the importance of rare earth minerals. I understand the parallels between a strategic oil reserve and a strategic rare minerals reserve. I get all of that. But you can achieve a lot without having the government own those things.
I think one of the things that they were doing today, though, was, I mean, we all remember COVID and the supply chains, right?
Yeah.
And the argument that the administration is making, it's their argument, you could think it's right or wrong, is we need to do these things because we're not going to let China take us hostage and take the world hostage on this whole rare earth mineral deal.
Yeah, but they've got a rare earth mineral deal in regard to Ukraine. Let's accept this proposition. There's nothing traditional.
Oh, so you're good with that now? You're good with that now all of a sudden? See, this is the Democrats and the Republicans sort of crossing all over the place.
It's the Republicans that are confused, not the Democrats and stuff. I'm confused keeping up with their policies and stuff. They're taking interest in private sector companies now. But I will say this. There's nothing, there's nothing traditional about this administration. And so this administration doesn't have an identity. They're all over the place. And given Trump and his following, you can call him a communist, socialist, or say these have these attributes or characteristics, but it's not going to change Donald Trump being Donald Trump and practicing Trumpism, which takes a little bit from every part of the political spectrum, and he gets away with it because he's got the Congress with him, he's got the Senate with him, and he's got MAGA supporters with him.
Do you think there's something there, though, on what they were doing today?
The reality is this. Months ago, when we first began conversations with China and the Trump administration decided that these tariffs were going to be effective, we thought we were really going to be tough with China. The reality of the matter is we haven't really seen that pay off. We've just been in this back and forth posture with tariffs, and now here we are with rare earth minerals and devastation on soybean farmers in terms of the supply chain grab that the Trump administration is claiming. We haven't gotten any further in our trade relationships and our trade policies by what the Trump administration has done, despite all of their promises at the outset.
I disagree with part of that about the trade relationships with generally, but I think you might have a little bit of truth there on China. We're still going this back and forth, don't know where we are. I'll be curious to see if that changes because of Gaza. because the president, I think, has got a little momentum. He's got some confidence. He was on the stage with all these world leaders. Does that mean he's going to be more aggressive with Putin and more aggressive with Xi? I'll be watching for that.
But neither. Sorry, go right ahead. No, I was going to say the problem with China and the U.S. is neither one can afford to hurt one another. They're deeply interdependent with one another. That's why you have this helter-skelter approach.
To Mick's point, though, is Trump going to be more emboldened?
Yeah, I think he probably is, but I think in the first administration we were tough on China, and I think we did isolate China and get concessions. I worry as well that we've actually been weak on China, whether it comes to TikTok and giving them what they want on TikTok, canceling operations and trade, and doing military operations and training exercises in South Korea, Japan, not letting the Taiwan president land in the United States. The posture, despite the rhetoric being tough, the posture is totally different than it was in the first administration.
How about this for a day? CIA covert operations and you two.
Trump is a news-making machine.
Calling it out. Thank y'all.
Just can't keep up.
It's still to come. Other side of the break, the tail of the tape, the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, and Speaker Mike Johnson. Are we really going to get a showdown between those two? I'll explain.
Tonight, Chris Cuomo, Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith, and more.
Join us for a nationwide conversation.
Cuomo, live from the Kennedy Center, the NewsNation Town Hall. Tonight, 8, 7 Central.
For a night of television you cannot afford to miss.
Only on NewsNation. News for all Americans.
If you're just getting home, trying to catch up on today's top stories, here's some of what's trending on thehill.com. Jeffries accepts challenge, says he wants to debate Speaker Johnson on C-SPAN, that debate between the two top leaders in the House. And then there's this as well. The Supreme Court seems inclined to limit race in redistricting in a case over Louisiana's congressional map. The Hill reporting that the court is leaning toward restricting the use of race as a factor. To check out those stories and more, all you have to do, head on over to The Hill. thehill.com. All right, coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Report, seconds away. She's taking a closer look at the conspiracies from both the left and the right surrounding the Charlie Kirk assassination. It's coming up just seconds here on NewsNation. I thank you so much for watching us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. I hand it over to Elizabeth.